want to welcome everyone and certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here, and want to thank Renee for setting everything up. So to kick this off, biggest thing you're going to take away from here is how to fill a gap that's been unintentionally created by higher education, professional development, organizational trading, and certainly trading educators. And they didn't do it intentionally. They just didn't have the perspective, have the awareness, weren't benefit of a background to understand this problem. And I just have to say this to keep the CFTC happy. Trading futures, options on futures, and retail off-exchange foreign currency transactions involve substantial risk for loss, not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not indicative of future results. So getting back to this gap, it changes everything. If you've spent any time trading at all, you're frustrated by the same thing everyone else that works so hard to be successful is. Not being able to consistently wait for the market to align with what we want to do. It's not hard to figure out if market's going to go up or down. The tough part is recognizing the when. In other words, waiting for those triggers that we have identified that validate alignment, and then consistently executing when that comes into play. And unfortunately, most traders, they're type A's, a lot of energy, push themselves, very proactive, so they end up taking trades ahead of that intelligent risk point. And so when the intelligent risk point comes, they usually have to make back money they lost, and they're aggravated. So instead of having high energy, positive, high confidence, and then taking the trigger and trading and adding to a winning position, they take the trade, they're happy to make up what they lost and get back to even, while the market keeps going their direction and they're not in. And I'm sure that you guys, if you can chime in, anyone who agrees with that, just let me know. But that's the experience. We want to change that, and what we're going to do is fill the gap to make that happen. So higher returns, they're the product of good decisions or good luck, right? So obviously we want to bet on our own good decisions. Developing higher intuitive functions is going to make that happen. That's the background that Renee ran through. My client profile, I have these are serious professionals that semi-retired, nearing retirement, retired, but certainly want to keep going. They treat trading as a profession. They understand they've got to put the time into it. They don't look at it as get rich quick. Some of them have spent time in trading rooms and different environments that really have not taught them how to make their own decisions. And so they come to me. And fortunately, I've got clients from all over the world. Great thing about the internet. So just a little bit more background. So just ask yourself, in 2017, were you able to keep pace with the opportunities in the market? Were you able to maintain bias-free filtering, processing, application of information that allowed you to achieve high returns? I mean, the market was up 30%. And certainly there was lots of opportunity in the futures markets with that. So, how did you do? And if you struggled, it was probably for two reasons. You didn't have the gap filled, and because you didn't have that gap, you couldn't minimize the risk for bias. You couldn't get to the good information, filter it fast enough, make the most out of it. So we want to change that. Now the challenge to change is that we're already playing catch up. In other words, the volume and speed of information is increasing so fast, we're already more likely to be overwhelmed than stay ahead of it. And so when we fill this gap, we're going to learn how to accelerate out. I want you to imagine each die is a piece of information, and they're all simultaneously demanding our attention. Now imagine them coming out at the screen at us about 30 miles an hour. If we could somehow protect ourselves and look out onto the horizon, we see that wall of information getting higher and deeper by the moment. That's what we have to deal with. When we learn how to fill this gap, now we're going to be like a missile accelerating out onto the information, locked in on what's most relevant. And we'll stay ahead of the rate of change, stay ahead of price, we'll make good decisions. The energy we're throwing out will just eviscerate, vaporize all this noise that's irrelevant. But it's the consequences of Moore's law that's accelerating this change. Gord Moore co-founded Intel in '68. He noticed the number of transistors fitting on a chip was doubling every year. He hypothesized computing power would double every 2 years. Ray Kurzweil, chief engineer for Google, looked at that and said, hey, if that's happening, then the volume and speed of information is doubling. That's how he made his argument for singularity, that we'll need a chip in our head to keep up. So this doubling at some degree since 1968, let's just use the year 2000. By then, if you were a professional, you were on a computer, right? So if we do the math, doubling every 2 years, we went past 256 in 2016. We're on our way to 512 in 2018. Just ask yourself, are you going to be twice as fast, cognitively independent of machines in your ability to filter, process, and apply information a year from now than you were in 2016, a year ago? How are you going to double it again when we go to 2020? How are you going to double it again when we've got to be at 2048 in 2022? Now, we can't know the exact rate, the exact magnitude, but the need to dramatically speed up, undeniable. Undeniable. So most people are chasing change. They keep thinking it's a faster processor or better software or better program or some magical thing out there. Or maybe they're creating their own app or algorithm. They're chasing. That's not the solution. You've got to take a step back. You've got to fill that gap, get yourself organized, develop more fully the behaviors that are going to speed up your ability to filter, process, and apply information, get ahead of price. That changes everything. That's going to give you the energy to patiently wait, the conviction to consistently execute. You will consistently engage in intelligent risk. You won't waste your time getting sucked into the market when it's not a quality trading opportunity. So some people think of what I do as addressing psychology. I hate that word. Whenever I hear it, I think of science of trust. And when you think about it, trust gives us the energy we need to stay ahead of things. It's that energy that allows us to patiently wait and builds a strong conviction to consistently execute. It's our greatest source. So it makes perfect sense that we should know how to build and earn trust most effectively. And sure, be honest, be fair, treat people like you would like to be treated. If something's broken, fix it, take responsibility, right? Those are all functional actions. There's foundational beliefs and behaviors that create the awareness of those things happen at the functional level, and filling the gap changes everything. It's going to be able to organize our accumulated skill, knowledge, and experience so we can consistently realize our potential and get to a better place. All that's happening because we're learning how to optimize decision-making and execution. What we're really doing is developing unconscious and continuous improvement so we can go from a linear to an exponential development path, maintain our independence from the ever-increasing power of machines. We're going to keep getting to better information faster and making more out of it. And as you learn how to do this, you're going to become a better role model, mentor, and leader. Better boss, better dad, better friend, better partner, better neighbor, better coach. So please know, this isn't just listen to what I say today, or this just isn't, go through my course. That's just is going to get the base knowledge. Then you have to do the work to put it into practical application. Then you have to stay in the process. Evaluate, adjust, improve, repeat. That's going to take some time. At a minimum, it's about a 4-month process to slingshot ahead of the rate of change. And it's not as solid every day, but over that 4 months, about 30 to 60, maybe a little bit more hour of your time, but certainly worth it considering the alternative. So 5 words really sum up what we have to do: radical ego, intuitive, instinctive, and consequences. You know, we hear the word radical. I think most people associate crazy stuff. You don't want to be radical, right? Well, what radical means is that, you know, that's what's happening because of the consequences of Moore's law, radical change. We're going from a traditional into a hyper-dynamic work environment where so much information so fast, we have to achieve and sustain high intuitive function to stay ahead of it. So that's what's happening. So again, Moore's law is driving it. And we've got to do what's necessary to get past it. We have to be willing to make radical change. But to do that, we got to get past our ego. And not in the Freudian sense, but as defined by the popular culture. Our ego telling us we can control things that we can't, know things that we don't. When we listen to our ego, we end up like the coyote chasing the roadrunner. We're off the cliff and we crash and burn. When we listen to our ego, it's blocking us from gaining the knowledge, awareness for those nuggets that connect the dots that lead to those aha moments so we can get to that better place, greater self-trust. Ego does something else that's really bad. When we hear a familiar word or phrase, it pulls us away, plays what's ever in the memory bank so we can tell ourselves how smart we are. It's probably happened to you during this presentation already. And then you come back and you play catch up. Don't let that happen. Don't miss out on the nuggets. Hang on my every word. Pretend. Well, don't pretend. You're going to get the secret code, but you've got to listen. Keep the ego shut down. How do I know this? When I came to trading, I thought I was well prepared. I don't have time to give you my full background, but graduated from a highly competitive, the top, really accounting program in the nation. Had my CPA, working at Arthur Andersen in their small business audit and tax, the plum position, if you will. But when I came to trading, man, I was at the exchange by 7, staying till after 4, doing tax and write-up work at night and on the weekends to pay my bills. Never worked so hard for so little. After 18 months, I see it just like yesterday. I was sitting out on the patio at home having a few beers with my dad. And I told him, I said, Pop, I'm just going to go get my teaching certificate, coach football in high school, and, you know, that's going to be the end of it. He said, no, you're looking at it the wrong way. And he was right. I was looking at everything at the functional level. Where is price going to go and when? And now, you guys, it's, you know, this is back in 1983 where we were doing hand charts. That we had some computer tools, but nowhere near what's available today. And today, I mean, you've got all of this shiny, bright stuff that says, hey, come on in. You've got online trading rooms. You've got software platforms, all this crazy stuff. But at the end of the day, it comes down having the awareness to make good decisions. And if you're processing somebody else's information on top of your own, you're just falling that much further behind. You have to learn how to think for yourself, develop your own process that's going to keep getting you to the best information, analyzing it fast, making the most out of it. And that's where the effort needs to go at the foundational level, developing that process. Then you'll have the trust, the weight, the conviction to execute. You'll break through. You'll consistently take intelligent risk. So think of foundational development as learning the rules of the road. You know, driving the car, we have those rules of the road. They allow us to project a future price pattern. And that's foundational performance. Then functional development is learning how to drive the car. Functional performance is positioning ourselves in the lane and the speed we're going to travel in. So you're going down the interstate. Foundational development performance is projecting that future price pattern. Functional, determining the lane and speed you're going to be in based on that projection of the future pattern. So if you've ever driven on a busy interstate, you're making thousands of unconscious decisions at a deep level on lane and speed while you're having a conversation or listening to music or this, that, or the other. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you take evasive action, avoid an accident. And you don't have conscious awareness of what just happened until it's over. Sound familiar? So, and I'm just trying to keep track of my question box here. I seem to have just misplaced it. But anyway, on the trading side, foundational development is learning how to develop the beliefs and behaviors that optimize decision making and execution. And then foundational performance is achieving high intuitive function. And then foundational development for a trader is when's price going to go? Defining state, forecasting price movement, craft strategy, qualifying alignment, executing. And then functional performance is applying high intuitive function to get ahead of everything, to anticipate what that validation of the triggers are going to signal. In other words, see it coming, so when it's happening, we're not asking ourselves, hey, is that really good and everything else? Boom, no, we got what we were looking for. Boom, we're on to the next thing. We're taking intelligent risk. And we have such trust in all of this. We have the energy to wait and consistently execute, do that time and time again. We keep taking intelligent risk. So this is a slide I want you to snip and capture. But basically, what happens when we fill the gap, we learn how to minimize the risk for bias and how we filter, process, and apply information. We neutralize development and performance risk defined by the 3 blind spots. Difference between how we perceive our behavior and the reality of our conduct. Difference between what we believe we know and the actual depth of our knowledge, and our inability to know how our behavior is impacting the efforts of others. Any one of those can be fatal. You're thinking about the last, why is the behavior on others so important? Well, energy is one big equation. We want to have as much positive energy when we're trading as we can. And we have to have a positive impact on others away from trading for that to happen. And then you'll be able to illustrate the mechanics integrating foundational and functional development performance. And that is the game changer. That's where we really connect the dots, give us those aha moments, that strong trust to wait and to execute. And so breaking all of this down is what changed everything for me. So we have to become intuitive. And that's what allows us to get through everything fast enough. Go back to the example of driving the car. Got to have that future vision, have to be ahead of price. Intuitive development makes that happen. We don't want to be doing guessing. So intuitive function is unconscious application of learned and developed skill, knowledge, and experience. It's the integration of our creativity and imagination in a manner causing us to consistently realize and expand our potential. It's proactive behavior driving our evolution. Now, look at this picture of these 3 gentlemen riding horses. I want you I mean, the level of intuitive function for this to happen has to be incredibly high. Got a powerful animal underneath you. Then you have to work in harmony with that animal. You have to sense the energy of the animal. You have to position yourself, keep yourself balanced in the saddle. And then you have to take in all the other information around you. The condition of the ground, which is pretty difficult to tell when it's snow covered. You're riding with people behind you, and these guys look like they're at a pretty good gallop. Just think about all the information that's being processed in a nanosecond and how they trust themselves to do that and how much energy. You look at the joy in their faces. They're just having a blast. That's high intuitive function. So you guys are all intuitive to some degree already. The most effective when you consistently achieve and sustain higher intuitive states. That's how you're going to get to the superior awareness to consistently outperform by seeing and doing before others. So real important. High intuitive function is the key, not IQ. IQ helps, but if you don't have the high awareness to apply your IQ, it's not going to get you anywhere. High intuitive function is developing that awareness, the street smart that we need to apply book smart. All right, big flashing red light here. Please understand the difference between intuitive function and instinctive behavior. Instinctive behavior is 180 degrees away. It's unconscious behavior that's shared by a species necessary to its survival. It's coded into us. It's part of our DNA. It's reactive behavior keeping us safe. Does everybody follow me on this? And I'm trying to find my questions box. I don't know what I did with it here. Just have a hard time with facial expression and body language over the internet. So anyway, I apologize. I've lost my question box, but I hope you're all with me. But please understand that distinction. In other words, if I took an Aborigine out of the outback who had never been part of civilization, if I could get him calmly to sit in the seat of a car, he would not intuitively know how to drive the car. No, learn and develop skill, knowledge, or experience. So if you think you're going to intuitively trade in a short period of time by playing follow the leader, relying on somebody else's information, that's why the failure rate is so high. Again, to process someone else's information and then your own, you're just falling further and further behind. So obviously, the more information comes at us, the more risk we're at of being overwhelmed, probability goes up, behavior is going to shift from proactive to reactive. In other words, we're going to be chasing, we're going to be falling further and further behind. We don't want that to happen. We want to be intuitive, unconscious, accelerating, continuous improvement. It's going to take us from a linear, natural learning and improvement progression to an exponential development path. We're going to neutralize the consequences of Moore's law. We are going to fill that development gap. So that's our objective. Again, we can rely on luck, or we can learn how to make good decisions a constant. And high intuitive function makes that happen. So again, when was the last time you evaluated, tuned up, strengthened your unconscious decision-making process? Probably never. And it's not your fault. Higher education, professional development, organizational training, they didn't tell you or show you how to do it. I want to talk about absolute truths. It's generational knowledge that keeps getting refined. It allows us to sit on the shoulders of giants. For me as a CPA, my absolutes were FASB, GAAP, the tax code. I had to embed all of that to get my degree, to pass the CPA, to get a job. And then over time, those absolutes evolve into best practices that give us competitive advantage, high performance. So that's the way everyone's wired. It doesn't matter, engineer, lawyer, doctor, artist, musician, athlete. Each profession has its absolutes. If we accept and hold ourselves accountable to them, we're building and earning the trust that gives us the power to think independently, develop our own best practices, outperform in the market. It is not conforming. So many people think, well, you just are conforming. No, what you're doing is you're working smart. You're not reinventing the wheel. You have the humility to take that generational knowledge, use it to make you the best you can be, and then pay it back by applying better ways to use it for the next guy. Be more efficient improving the human condition. So when we fill this gap, everything changes. Instead of high performance, now we've got high intuitive function that's triggering peak performance. And that's happening because as we understand the power of intuitive in function and how achievable it is and how necessary it is, we become inspired and compelled to get it. So we're going to work the intuitive development process, develop those foundational beliefs and behaviors that are going to give us a tangible understanding for how we're accepting and holding ourselves accountable to those absolute performance truths. Think about what I just said. If I ask you, how do you know you're personally responsible? What's making you accountable? And if I was going to speak again as a CPA, an accountant, I'd say, well, FASB, GAAP, FASB, the tax code, my CPA, my continuing professional education, all stuff at the functional level. I'm not mentioning anything at the foundational level that's going to give me the awareness for what I need to do at the functional level. Take those absolutes, have great best practices to gain significant competitive advantage. And what's happening in trading, we're just looking at, hey, where and when, price, all of that. We're not doing anything at the foundational stuff or level, develop those beliefs and behaviors and give us that high awareness we need to stay ahead of price, make good decisions, outperform the market at the functional level. So when you learn how to think for yourself, you can do this. In 97, I started trading in 83. In 97, we just kept making new highs, it seemed like every day, almost not like now. And I had a real tough time trading the market, didn't want to just use Fibonacci price extensions because everybody else was using them. So I created a better way. And I'll spare you all the details, but these horizontal lines represent my proprietary value level calculations. And these calculations were made before the market ever traded above 2,500. And once the calculation is made, it does not change. The calculation adjusts for sensitivity. That's why you see the different colored lines. But the calculation itself does not change. And you can see how well it framed the market. Imagine having the benefit of the path the market was going to follow for the last 300 points because you trusted yourself. And this is one of the things that I teach my clients, how to do this proprietary calculation. Works for any actively traded futures contract or stock. And again, they don't change once they're calculated. When a contract expires and rolls, no adjustment is needed. This is the calculation for oil. Calculation for gold, you see the sensitivity down below and then the sensitivity going back out once volatility picked up again. This is a 10-year. So again, just an example of the power that comes from developing your own awareness. I teach you this calculation. You know how to do it. Now it's yours. In other words, you're not relying on software. You're not relying on clicking the mouse. You put pen to paper, takes you a little bit of time, but you trust it. And then you observe it, just because you get it, and I'm telling you it works, you still have to observe, see it work day after day, and then you start building the trust to use it. And we reinforce development of that trust. And with my clients 6 out of 7 days a week in the daily briefing, 8 to 8:30 every morning. You get a chart book from me. It takes me about 2 hours to put together every night, reinforcing all of these lessons. And then we're in the Sunday evening review from 7:30 on, more in-depth Q&A. You're with me 6 out of 7 days a week, and that's for a full year. So again, we fill this gap. Now we have that tangible understanding for how we're accepting and holding ourselves accountable to absolute truths. What we're really doing is developing very strong ethical conduct. That's the key to high intuitive function. When you link ethical conduct to high performance, you understand that they're inseparable. And so that's why this stuff comes together so fast. And what we're really doing is we're developing a more complete understanding for the power and construction of trust. To help you understand how little we know about that, capitalism is the monetization of trust. You want to understand why we became the most powerful nation in the shortest period of time? It's because of our ability to monetize trust. This is Amazon. They're closed yesterday, $12.93. Their capitalized value, if you will. If you took shares outstanding times that stock price, you'd get a big number. I just did it on a book value basis. I got this from Yahoo Finance. Book value per share is $25.28. Amazon's monetized $1,268 of trust per share. Now that's an extreme example. But even if a company just doubled, monetized $50 per share of trust, that would still be very, very good. But if you take the time to understand why you buy a stock, you trust the management, you trust growth in the industry, you trust their employees, you trust that they're going to meet and anticipate, continue to meet demand in the market. It's all about trust. So when we gain that more complete understanding, going back to those risks and threats that are created by the gap, not being able to minimize risk for bias and how we perceive, comprehend, and project information. I mean, just go back to last November, day after the election. Ask yourself if political bias got in the way. Were you overly optimistic and thought, oh, I'm just going to buy everything and everything's going to go straight up? Which probably wouldn't have been a bad deal. Or was your bias, oh, this is just terrible, everything's going to go down? Or did you have the objective bias to break it down and think things through for what to expect over the next year and the year and the year after that? And those that had the least bias, who were best able to break it down and think it through, I guarantee you they had the greatest returns in 2017. They will continue to have the greatest returns going forward. And again, when we fill this gap, now we neutralize the blind spots, the difference between what we believe we know and the depth of our knowledge. In other words, we keep seeing and filling the gap. We're driving continuous and accelerating improvement. Our behavior is becoming more consistent. So it's eliminating that risk of a gap between how we perceive our behavior and the reality of our conduct. I'm waiting. Really? I'm getting out of my losers. Really? Actually adding to them. I think we've all been there. And so as we keep working this process, developing this tangible understanding, filling this gap, we trust ourselves more and more, higher energy, greater information, and knowledge transfer and flow more effectively. We know who, what, and when, or not to trust. And again, it's because through this intuitive development process, we're developing tangible understanding for how to accept and hold ourselves accountable to the absolutes. And that tangible understanding, that genuine knowing we're doing the work that matters most, preparing to do it best, makes all the difference in the world. It just allows us to commit that much more deeply and understand the ultimate differentiator of a high performer. It's not the smartest, not the biggest, not the fastest. It's the person that has the greatest awareness for the smallest detail and the ability to sustain the greatest effort. And that's what intuitive development does, getting us to the work that matters most, preparing us to do it best, awareness for the smallest detail, the ability to sustain the greatest effort. So we're in the best position to anticipate and execute opportunity, furthest ahead of price, have the energy to wait, the conviction to consistently execute, and that continuous accelerating improvement. We're evolving ahead of the market so we can stay ahead of price. We've gone from linear to exponential. Again, the risks and threats are ego. We want to shut it down. There's all sorts of cultural messaging that's out there telling us we're entitled to privilege without obligation. As soon as we believe that, we're not going to do the work. We're not going to build and earn trust. We go from proactive to reactive. We cut our own throat. You guys are going to want to capture this slide. This is a great way to evaluate where you're at. Define a development baseline. Take the time to work through these questions, answer them. Get a journal. Write them down. Do not electronic journal, voice journal, video journal. Counterproductive. Put pen to paper. It'll slow you down. It'll force you to get to a deeper understanding for what you believe you already know. Get to those deeper levels of examination. Okay? That's what you want to do. You're going to want to capture this slide too. All right, identifying the elements causing high intuitive function to occur. Can you do that? Define the beliefs and behaviors best developing and supporting them. Explain the mechanics, integrating foundational and functional development performance. That's this internal engine that optimizes cognitive awareness, decision making, and execution. This is what I teach you how to build. It'll take away the understanding, knowledge, and tools to fill the gap with this. Have that tangible understanding of accountability that turns high performance into high intuitive function to trigger peak performance, so you can experience levels of performance that you can't even imagine. So you're going to want to capture this slide. Do the work on this slide. And if you can't, don't worry about it. That's why I'm here to help. But if you go through this, you're going to be able to see the gaps you need to fill. What works, what's broken, what needs to be replaced, what's missing. You'll be able to build the engine. But if you can't, I'm here to help. You got to ask yourself, how much is your time worth? It literally took me over 20 years to figure all of this out, get it to the point where I could share it. So probably on the short side of things, maybe 1,000 hours for you, because I've given you all the clues, told you the questions to ask, pointed you in the right direction. But if you want to get it down to under 100 hours or 50 hours, and that spread out over about 3-4 months, then that's what I'm here to help you to do. So again, know this process, a significant amount of reflection is required at every stage of examination. Again, you've got a journal, put pen to paper. Writing slows down the reflection process. Get you past what you believe you already know. You will radically change your behavior at that foundational level so you can accelerate out onto the horizon. Be locked in on what's most relevant. No matter how much information they throw, you'll be able to blow through it. In other words, that wall can get as thick and tall and come as fast as they want to send it, but you'll be okay because you'll have been able to go from a linear to an exponential development path. So again, our choice, either we're going to neutralize the consequences of Moore's law by learning the intuitive development process or not. I've given you a bunch of clues. Hopefully you did those captures of the pages as I suggested. And again, we've got to radically change at the foundational level if we're going to speed up, if we're going to be relevant. And here's the thing, great joy comes from being ahead of things, right? How cool is it when we're tapping someone on the shoulder and, you know, handing them the wrench before they need it? They just look at it and smile, right? Well, imagine being able to do that for yourself in the market, being ahead of it, tapping yourself on the shoulder. Hey, this is what you're looking for. Oh, there it is. Now we go. Easiest thing to do is defend the status quo. Let our ego convince us that we can control things that we can't, know things that we don't. If you believe you can get faster, and again, guys, this isn't rocket science. You don't even need a high school degree. All that's required is the desire to better understand what works and then do the work to develop the behaviors to make it happen. Better understand what works, develop the behaviors to make it happen. And that's what I do. That's what I teach you. And I promise, if you do this, you'll have a blast. So my website is trust1st.com. You guys see it up here. And I want you to go there. You can click on this logo here, T1 Store. It'll take you into the store. I'm going to just back this up a bit. And you can go through all the products that I have here. I've got a full year trader development program, live on trading school week. You can check those out. But what I want you to focus on is IDT basic training. This is what you want. You can read all about it, read the reviews, proceed to the cart. And here, I'll just take this out here and I'm going to put this back in because I want you to know how to put in the code. So you're going to add the cart. I won't ask you that, it'll just ask me. So you go to proceed to cart. The next step, checkout. Notice the price, $6.97. Then here it's going to ask you, do you have a coupon code? Type in basic, all caps, BASIC 250. Hit apply. It'll drop your cost to $447. Okay. So I'm going to take this away for a minute. So in basic training, it's 6.5 hours of instruction broken out into 9 on-demand learning modules. There's really 4 sessions. There's 3 modules in the first session, then 2 modules in 2, 3, and 4. And phase 1 is that first session. And again, it's about 3.5 hours to get all together just for that first part to go through a process that really gives you a baseline. And then phase 2 is about another 14 hours, and that gets you to building the engine. And again, you work through that on-demand learning modules. And then there's the phase 3, the 90-day reflection cycle. Each weekday morning for 12 weeks, 60 reflections, you're getting guidance and direction to tune that engine, that cognitive decision-making engine, to your specific development and performance needs. Really powerful stuff. Then the third Saturday of each month, it just happens to be tomorrow for this month, I do a live online intuitive development review. So great way to come in, get your questions answered. This training has been out since 2009, consistently refined, not much change to it over the last year and a half. It is really highly efficient. I've branched out. I've trained senior intelligence officers for the Department of Homeland Security. I've got a proposal in with the Department of Defense for this as a prophylactic for PTSD resilience training. Been recommended to the Director of National Intelligence, the Office of Director of National Intelligence. This is back in 2015 when Clapper was the ODNI, or I should say the DNI. So really powerful stuff. So you can get this discount, and in addition, again, save the 250, get it for 447, and I will also permission you into the version for business professionals and entrepreneurs. And you can read about that version at theotherai.com, but you'll get that free. I will enroll you in that after you purchase. But here's theotherai.com, and you'll see it's got the same packaging. It has a lower price because there's trader-specific stuff in the version that you'll get for $447, actually cheaper than the $497 at the other AI. So bottom line, guys, act now. Don't put this off. It'll make you better at everything that you do. If you can believe you can get better, do it. And the final thing I want to leave you with is that down at Illinois, Professor Perry taught our review course for the CPA. Amazing guy. He was a Marine veteran. This guy was like all of 5'6" and just built like a tank. His forearms were bigger than Popeyes, honest to God. And he was Kansas. He had this twang in his speech. Always wore short, white short sleeve shirts, button down, black tie. He had black rimmed glasses, and he had this just thick white hair like Dudley Do-Right. And he was, late 60s teaching the review class, more energy than anybody. It was a 2-hour class. He would come in and he would just be on fire. And his whole deal was, hey, it's not my problem if you can't keep up. And he's going along. We're a couple weeks in, and he's sensing some tension, and he very genuinely turns around and he says to every one of us, he says, hey, look, you guys are good. You've done the work. You've gotten through the flunk out courses. Trust yourself. Don't hesitate. Do the work. So you guys are good. You probably put a lot of time and effort into this. It's not that you don't want to do the work. You're just not organized because you haven't filled the gap. Fill the gap. Get organized. It'll get you to the level that you believe you can achieve.